Hi guys, so welcome to yet another live of the live Q&A sessions with healing chronic illness and longevity. And we have a lot of questions today, especially since we had two from last week and then all the questions from today. So thank you for sending so many good questions, and let's just get started because there's quite a few questions. I won't be looking too much in the comments today or posting anything in the comments just because we have a lot of questions and I really would like to get through all of them. So let's get started. So first question, Amy says, were you ever diagnosed with dysautonomia or orthostatic hypertension in your journey? Well, yes, I was diagnosed with orthostatic hypertension for sure. I was never formally diagnosed with dysautonomia, but I can tell you for a fact that I had it. For those of you that don't know, dysautonomia is like basically the dysregulation. It could be too much, too little of the autonomic nervous system, and it happens as a result of trauma or insult or injury or mold exposure, Lyme disease, and it could happen with a multitude of reasons, but especially any damage to the neurological system. And so, yeah, I was never formally diagnosed with dysautonomia, but I had all the symptoms. Like I was not sweating at all. I had my heart rate would just like spike up if I went up a flight of stairs. So much fatigue, exercise intolerance, shortness of breath, headaches. I had a lot of visual disturbances. So yeah, I mean, I really had all the symptoms. But as far as orthostatic hypertension, yes, I definitely also did have that and was diagnosed with that. For those of you that don't know, orthostatic hypertension is when you are in a like you're in a downward position, whether you're squatting or laying down, and then when you get up, you get very dizzy. And for me, that was a very classic sign initially that something was wrong, especially with my adrenals. And so for me, the one of the things that helped so much with my orthostatic hypertension was the adrenal cocktails. I put my recipe a few days ago for the adrenal cocktail. Um, the real recipe, I mean, the one I put obviously the other day when I did this long bike ride, did not have cream of tartar in it. But the real adrenal cocktail recipe is I do a squeeze a whole lemon organic, and the juice of that plus 8 ounces of water, plus I put half a teaspoon of organic Himalayan salt, and then just a little pinch of cream of tartar, which is potassium. And so for me, that was and still remains a good game changer as far as orthostatic hypertension. There was I think in January, it was like 4 or 5 weeks where I did not do my adrenal cocktail in the morning, and I started noticing orthostatic hypertension, was dizzy if I would squat down to do something for the dogs and then stand up and get really dizzy. So for me, it's been really helpful to continue having the adrenal cocktails. And then I put pictures, and I told you guys of the vitamin C and all that stuff that I kind of do. And that's also just been very helpful to help with healing, but also to help with my symptoms. Um, Next question, Rue asks, dealing with heavy metal toxicity in an older person. Grandma has a metal hip that created a tumor with metal toxicity, apparently oddly common. Having a hard time peeling back the layers. The parasites carry the metal around, and it seems to cause a herx no matter what I try. Her herxing involves heart issues, and it's a big risk. We focus on open drainage best we can so far, and that's about it. So thank you, Rue, for that question. I will tell you that detoxing heavy metals and chelation and all that is a very specific art. It has to be done very cautiously, or you can cause more damage than benefit. And it has to be done by a practitioner. That's not even something that I'm qualified in, but it has to be done by a very specific practitioner, and it has to be done in very specific steps. And the chelation, which is the removal of these metal toxins and metal parts and things like that, is a very specific process. So I can't speak to that, but I can speak to the herxing, and that's why I think that it's very important that a practitioner is doing it. I will tell you that for me, especially with all the sensitivities that I had, and just unable to tolerate anything. I couldn't even tolerate 2 or 3 drops of distilled water. So for me, any amount of supplements or any kind of detoxification methods, even glutathione, I couldn't tolerate anything. And so for me, the initial steps were very, very critical to really try and get all of that under control and manage my sensitivities, and then to really deal with the herxing afterwards. Um, the one thing I have found, and I have herxed quite a bit over the years, especially when I was really sick, I used to herx all the time, and I really wish I had found this recipe before. But then over the years, I've gotten PRP in my knee, and I've had ozone injected, or I've done ozone therapy, hyperbaric, it really makes you herx a lot. So all of those things, and I wish I had found this recipe before, but I have recently, in the last year or two, discovered what helps with herxing. So it's, again, juice of a lemon, organic lemon if possible, and then 8 ounces of water, and then 2 Alka-Seltzer Gold. It cannot be regular Alka-Seltzer. It has to be Alka-Seltzer Gold because there's some stuff in it and it's got vitamin C. And so that's really something that is has helped me a lot with herxing. And then, once I got much better, I had to take Xifaxan for my SIBO, and I thought my herxing was gone, and it came back with a vengeance. I mean, I had healed and I was doing so much better, so I really wasn't having these herxing reactions anymore. And then all of a sudden, I did Xifaxan for SIBO, and my herxing was back with a vengeance. And so that was when I really started utilizing this Alka-Seltzer Gold, just 2 pills of that, and vitamin C. It's already got vitamin C, but then, some lemon juice water. And that really, really seemed to help a lot. So that's just a suggestion for the herxing. But again, if it involves heart issues, we have to be very, very careful because the metal can get very displaced in the body. It can make it to the brain, it passes the blood-brain barrier. So you really have to focus on that. And then the other thing too is I did 7 liver cleanses, which I've mentioned before. Later on, if you guys have questions, just put them in the chat box, and then when I finish tonight, later tonight, I can respond to some of them. But I did 7 liver cleanses, and that was very, very beneficial for me. A lot of dry brushing and a lot of sauna. The sauna was just huge for me for managing, opening my channels and detox channels and things like that, and to minimize herxing reactions. So all of those have been very helpful. But I think for the immediate quick fix, I really was doing very well with the Alka-Seltzer Gold and lemon juice. And that's just something that I used. So I really recommend working with a practitioner, especially if you're trying to chelate all these heavy metals. Claudia asks, what is the average time to detox from mold and be able to feel better? So it's funny, I was just having a conversation with a practitioner today morning about this. I mean, there are some people that really detox very quickly and are able to start feeling better in 6 months. And then there's people, especially like myself, who are very, very sensitive, have double MTHFR gene, and really had a problem with detoxing. And for me, it took years. So really there's no, timeline that you can put, in the how long it takes to feel better. I think a big source was to really make sure that you are away from the source of the mold. Your home is remediated and really thoroughly done. I think that's a big factor in how much better you'll start feeling. I know that was for me as well. Every time we remediated a little bit, I would feel a little bit better. I mean, it took me a long time to get there. So can't tell you I have an exact time, but just know that it's variable from 6 months to 6 years for some people. And it really just depends on your severity and your detoxing and your DNA, if you have MTHFR, and how much you're doing on a day-to-day basis. All of those factors come into play. Kelly asks, how to detox children from mold? Can a child regain memory after healing from mold? So, of course, the rosy picture in me wants to say yes. And yeah, it's definitely difficult to detox children from mold. We had to detox 2 of our kids, and My daughter wasn't, she was affected, but not as much as my son. My daughter's numbers didn't look great, but my son was affected a lot more. And it took a long time. I mean, we used a similar protocol with him of binders and, a lot of liver refresh and really just getting the liver detoxified. But my hope is, and at least this was my hope with my kids, that, you know, kids are really resilient and they regenerate very quickly. So hopefully they don't take as long. Their livers are a lot stronger. They haven't been exposed to as much toxins that we have as adults over the years. So I think that it's, definitely doable. My daughter's 100% completely back to normal. My daughter had, in the process of all of this, got bit by a tick, and she did get a tick-borne disease. She did end up getting early chiosis, and so for her, it was such an uphill battle, but she actually did very well. And they were on glutathione in the beginning and, a bunch of like liver detox stuff. And I had them on supercarbon 60 and things like that. So they were on a pretty good protocol as well. And, they seem to have done pretty well since then. My son still has, a lot of remnants. When you ask about can the child regain memory? You know, the problem with mold is that it causes so much neuroinflammation. So it was very, very visible in my son. And, it's just something that's just really difficult to treat. My daughter was very good. She went gluten-free and vegan for a whole year. She's still pretty much, 90% vegan just because it helped her a lot. So she's doing much better. My son has not gone gluten-free, but if you're able to go gluten free, that really helps with the neuroinflammation, especially when you have a compromised blood brain barrier due to the mold. Going gluten free is really, really helpful as far as calming that neuroinflammation down. And in this case, regaining memory. So that's definitely been very helpful. Claire says, what can I reach for instead of caffeine when I need the extra concentration to get me through work? That is such a great question, And Claire, I'll tell you my personal story. When I really got sick in the beginning, I never was that big of a coffee drinker. I would probably drink maybe half a cup, or let's just say three-quarters of a cup of coffee every morning. So let's just say about 6 to 7 ounces is really what I drank every morning. And still, it was so hard to give up the coffee because, of course, I got headaches in the beginning. The first 3 weeks was very brutal. And so I got headaches in the beginning. And then what I did, at least back then when I was very sick, is I first transitioned to green tea. Very organic, very pure green tea is what I first transitioned to because that was very helpful for me to still get a little bit of caffeine. And green tea has a lot of, antioxidants and a lot of other benefits, but it's a slow release caffeine. So you don't get this jolt of caffeine and then you come crashing. It's really just a slow release caffeine. So I did that and I still had headaches and stuff. You just can't go cold. I remember telling a patient once that if you go cold, you're going to really, set up for failure and probably rebound, and, nothing's going to work because you feel pretty terrible, especially when you stop caffeine in the beginning. And so like I said, in the beginning it was very tough, and then I reached for green tea. And then I was just able to stop. And I think there's a whole 2-year period where I did not have caffeine at all. I mean, and that includes chocolate. I used to eat at least like a small bar of chocolate or a couple of pieces of chocolate every single day after lunch. And I realized over time it made me feel worse and worse. I was just feeling sicker. So for me, the caffeine also counts in the chocolate, and I was that sensitive to it. And even till this day, I haven't been able to completely just go back. I mean, there were times I would have a big bar of chocolate just because I love chocolate. And so that was another thing. So if you're contemplating taking out caffeine, you really need to take out, coffee and tea and black tea and chocolate chips and chocolates and, espresso powder on top of tiramisu and all of that good stuff should really all be taken into consideration. But yeah, so green tea was the first start. And then I started doing, um, it's called Teeccino, Teeccino. Teeccino became my go-to. It is basically coffee and tea. They have a whole variety of flavors that is made from dandelion root. And it's the closest thing that I could find to coffee. I don't want to fool you. I don't want to tell you, oh, it tastes like coffee, because it doesn't. But it's a good substitute. For me, I really need to hold that nice warm cup of coffee in the morning and smell it. And so this was a pretty good second best. It's made out of, like I said, dandelion, and it's got chicory root and all this stuff in it. And dandelion is very good and detoxing for your body. Um, but then it's also gluten free, and it's got a whole bunch of flavors, and there's different kinds of coffees. There's mocha, there's the one I really like is vanilla caramel, I think, and there's a whole bunch of different ones. And then they also have teas, but my choices are limited because I need the gluten free one, and so my choices are limited in that sense. But I would do that with my regular oat milk creamer that I used to do before with my coffee, and it was very close. And I could just hold that nice hot cup and drink it with my breakfast every morning. So look into Teeccino, 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 and they have all different brands and things like that. And that was a really good start for me. And then I was without caffeine for at least 2, 3 years, so I really didn't miss it. I think I posted probably a couple of weeks ago a picture of a decaf cappuccino, which I hadn't had in like so many months. So I'm at that point now where I could probably once every 3 to 4 months get away with a decaf cappuccino, but even that's really not something that I go to much. And so that was my go-to. And then there's also Bloom, which has all different kinds of powders. There's a beetroot powder, there's a London fog, there's a matcha, there's a turmeric latte you can make. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different kinds. So that was another one that I still go to now. It's my afternoon drink sometimes, especially when I want something warm and I want to wake up a little bit. I have also in the last 2 years really started using a lot of adaptogenic mushrooms powders. And so I used to use, oh, I can't remember the brand. I used to use that at night. It was powder form, and it had a little turmeric. I'll have to remember the brand. If I find it, I'll post the links later. But I started doing that at night, and it was just really great for the healing properties of adaptogenic mushrooms. And then also just like lion's mane is very helpful, which is a mushroom. It's an adaptogenic mushroom. It's very helpful for brain health, decreasing neurological symptoms. We started doing some of that, and that's really been helpful. And then I know Four Sigmatic has their mushroom powder, like it's a whole mix of mushroom powders. So I do that a lot too, and it's brown and it's coffee like. So I do that sometimes. I really just rotate. I'm at a point I don't need caffeine at all in the morning, and this has been years since I've had caffeine in the morning. So now that's really good for me that I'm not addicted. That was another thing that I realized. I woke up and I needed coffee first thing in the morning. It's an addicting thing, there's so much stuff out there. Coffee is one of the most over-abused drugs out there. And so, I would get a headache without it. And I just, wherever we were traveling, would need coffee first thing in the morning to be able to function with 3 young kids, and things like that. So this is a very, very just exhilarating feeling now, not to wake up and need that cup of coffee. So it's very exhilarating. I'm not bound to anything, but when I do eat my breakfast, I still like something warm. And there are days, like now I've gone a few times a week where I'll just have my breakfast really quickly in the car, or my son has started driving. So he's driving and I'm just quickly eating my stuff in the car. And I don't even need any kind of coffee or tea or anything anymore. So it's a very, just freedom type feeling. But yeah, those are my go-tos. I think if you're really trying to reach the first thing that, to me, the first next best thing to a cup of coffee was Teeccino. And so try that. I'm not affiliated with any of these companies. And then, like I said, the Four Sigmatic, the mushroom coffee, I use their MCT oil and mushroom blend creamer as well. That's pretty good. Bloom is pretty good. So you just have to find what works for you. And then, good luck. It's definitely achievable. It's hard, but it's achievable. And once you achieve it and overcome the hump, you'll feel very, very good. Especially, I don't know what your condition is, but if you're a very chronically ill person, you have adrenal issues, you have, just fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue. I mean, all of these things, my adrenal issues were really, really magnified by coffee. And so for me, this was just very, very helpful to get off coffee completely, even the chocolate. Four Sigmatic makes this mushroom chocolate. It's made with cacao and it's much better. And so now I do a piece of that after lunch every day instead of my big, nice chocolate bar. I actually, till this day, if I still eat even a little like chocolate, mini chocolate, something, I get a bad headache still. So the adaptogenic mushroom chocolate is very good from Four Sigmatic. It's an acquired taste. Again, I'm not going to lie to you. It doesn't taste like chocolate, but once you get used to it, I really like it now. So it's pretty good. So I hope those are great suggestions for you because this is a really tough thing to achieve. But once you achieve it, you will really be glad you did. You're not just bound every morning to needing a cup of coffee to function. Melinda says, what are tests to ask to figure out what my safe foods are with MCAs? So, I actually have a love-hate relationship with food tests that are out there. I mean, I'm sure there's really good ones. My very, very early testing was with, I think, a company called Viome, Viome. And I'll be very honest with you, I did not care for their testing. I did not care. Their customer service was horrendous. I think they lost my samples and they wouldn't respond to a thing. It took them 5 weeks and I had to keep writing to them, like, do you have my samples? I just had a very terrible experience. I mean, the company had just started back then. This was years ago. So, maybe things are different now, but even their test that came back, I was just not very impressed with the results. And it pretty much like flagged me for a lot of things. It's like, as a vegetarian, you can't really eat much. So I'm not 100% convinced. I mean, they are good tests out there on the market that you can look up and read reviews and talk to your practitioner about. My regular doctor, once I got really sick and then we went through this whole gamut of functional medicine, and she ended up then doing a bunch of blood work, and I also went and saw an allergist, and he also did a whole bunch of blood work regarding like what IgG and IgMs and things that were IgAs that were showing up and things like that. And for the most part, like pretty much everything came back normal in the regular conventional blood test for IgG and IgA and stuff like that. So I don't know if I have the best answer for you. You'd have to just read and get reviews. I used to go to a chiropractor and he used to have a pamphlet and he used to swear by this food testing thing. And I think that you just have to ask and work with different practitioners. I don't know if you work with an acupuncturist or a chiropractor who really has one that they like. And, it's not just like histamine foods. Like if you have MCA, like a lot of histamine foods are a big problem. You cannot have, you know, cultured stuff and kimchi and that kind of stuff. Any of that stuff is very high histamines, and beer, and there's a lot of stuff out there which is tough for people with MCAs. But you really would just have to find out what foods are safe for you and not, based on whatever testing you decide to go, the route you decide to go. So just my little take. I've had, like I said, multiple experiences with it, but nothing that I felt was concrete. Tammy says, is there anything that works for brain fog that works fast? It can be really scary. One time while driving on my own road, I had no clue where I was or what side of the road to drive on and second guessed myself. Again, so hard to realize what is causing it. I mean, that is just such a multi-million-dollar question, Tammy. And you're probably going to think I'm crazy when I say this, but I had the exact same thing at the point of my peak of my illness, where I was lost driving back from dropping my kids to school. And I had driven this road for years and I didn't know where I was. And I had to call my husband. It was the peak of my illness. And that's when I got really, really frustrated. And I was like, something has to give. That's when I decided to go on my water only fast, and did a medically supervised water only fast. And it just, it was very nerve wracking. And my memory, and I would look at my kids sometimes, and, I knew who they were and I knew their names, but I would have to think of their ages and I would have to think of what grade they were in. It was very, very scary. And I think I mentioned this to you guys before. I had a neuroquant done, and I had 5 centers of my brain that had severe atrophy. I mean, I was devastated when I saw those neuroquant results. It's an MRI for the brain, and it's volume measurements of each region of your brain. I was devastated, and I knew that that was a big problem. So I totally get that, been there, done that. So to answer your question, what works for brain fog? So for me, at least back then, the biggest thing was curing myself, finding out what was the reason for this brain fog. And for me, my adrenals were a huge issue. They were shot. I was in adrenal failure, which meant my hormones were in complete disarray. All my estrogen, progesterone, testosterone was a complete mess, disarray. And so really it entailed getting to the root cause. So same thing, I think for you, you have to get to the root cause. What is it that's making you so sick? Do you have leaky gut? Do you have adrenal issues? Do you have hormonal imbalance? I mean, I know you've kind of discussed a few of the things, but part of it is to get to the root cause. And then once you get to the root cause, you treat it. And it's a long process. I think my brain fog was the last thing to go. I was I was pretty good. There was a 6-month period where I said, okay, I'm starting to heal, but my brain fog was still there, still there. And so that was really tough. So really, the answer is just getting to the root cause. You really, really have to get your adrenals fixed. Anytime you overexert yourself, your adrenals are going to go out of whack again. You're going to have more brain fog. And it was such a tough pill to swallow. There was a 3-year period where I did not exercise at all, because it really gave me so much brain fog the next day, or that even later on that day, because it meant that I had to completely rest my adrenals. And that was a big factor for me. And then, of course, balancing my hormones was a huge factor as well. So those are, a few things that come to mind as far as brain fog. I mean, there's so many causes of brain fog. You'd have to work with a practitioner to find it, the cause of it. The other thing, anything that works fast. I mean, I'm not big on just, quick fixes, but I will tell you 2 things that work for me. Pure Encapsulations has a NAC, that when I got COVID earlier in the year, I did pretty well, thankfully, but I did have a lot of brain fog for a month or so, and it just didn't feel good. And my adrenals were really shot even with the COVID again. So part of it, I think a lot of my brain fog came from the adrenals and from the hormonal imbalance. But I did do NAC. Pure Encapsulations has a good one. I did that 3 times a day, and it really helped. And the other thing that I was on for a while when I was sick, and I restarted, about 6 months ago, is Neuroflam. It's Neuroflamm. It is it's just a supplement that is really for neuroinflammation for your brain, and it contains like green tea cactins, and it contains curcumin and turmeric based stuff and things like that. And I think that's been a big help for me. There was a few years that I stopped, and I just felt kind of my brain fog coming back. And so I got back on it maybe 6 months ago, and I really do like it, and I really do feel that it helps me. So Neuroflam, it's by Apex Energetics, and then NAC, which is by Pure Encapsulations. Those are the 2 things that I have tried, and it's very helpful for me. It was very helpful for me with the brain fog. So hope that helps you. Brandy says, what is the best way to find a good Eastern medicine practitioner in my area? I'm looking for affordable alternatives for detoxing, healing, brain body inflammation, body aches, tremors, possible mold Lyme. Brandy, I may be a little biased just because of, me being halfway through my functional medicine practitioner program. And so for me, IFM, F like Frank, M like Mary.org, ifm.org is probably the best place that you can find a functional medicine practitioner that is really trained in a lot of this. It is a very, very vigorous program, and it's very tough to get through. And I'm only halfway through it, and I've got the other half to go. And then you have to do a case report for 6 months on a patient. You have a 250 question exam, I think you have to do to pass it. And that's how you become certified. So it's actually really tough. I know a lot of practitioners who I know and who I've worked with. If they're IFM certified, they said it's one of the toughest things that they have done in their lives. And so, yeah, it's really tough. And so I like ifm.org for that reason, because you really will get a very trained and certified practitioner who can really look at everything from the inside out. They start with your history all the way from childhood all the way to your present day, and anything and everything that could be an antecedent, a trigger, mediate, whatever, anything that's causing it. And they look at all this history, and I think that's very, very helpful as well. Um, and so that's really a good route to go. Um, Claire says, do you think it's possible to worry too much about diet and healing, which actually in turn makes you more ill because you're stressing yourself out about it? Absolutely yes, Claire. And I'm so glad you put this question. This is a really, really good question that most people don't really think about. I think it's very, very true. And when I was very sick in the beginning, absolutely. My life revolved around this. What I ate, what I drank, what I inhaled, what I looked at, my entire day revolved around it. And I think for those 2 years, I mean, my husband said that I had the patience of a saint. He said he could never do it if it was him. It really, really is just a really tough lifestyle and a way to lead, to live. But it had to be done. It had to be done for those 2 years. Once I started healing, or even saw a little glimmer of hope, I can't say I had started healing yet, but once I started healing a little bit and I had a little glimmer of hope, I started letting go of the reins a little bit. And so part of that was like where I was not, logging all my food in, or, I was doing a continuous glucose monitor for at least a year. I started not wearing the continuous glucose monitor because I wanted to do more intuitive eating, where I knew, I mean, I've always been a very, very clean eater. And so, I didn't really need a continuous glucose monitor for my diabetes or my sugars or anything like that, but I was so sick. My insulin resistance was very high at that point. And so, those are the things that for me, I didn't really need anymore. It was just more intuitive. You know what you need to do, you know what you need to take on a day-to-day basis, you know what you need to eat on a day-to-day basis. Like, I wasn't just stressing myself about I need 8 cups of, vegetables every day. It was like eating a very well balanced diet, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, getting really good amounts of protein and fiber and fat at each meal, getting healthy carbs in, things like that. And so I thought that that was really helpful um, for my soul. Yes, I needed all the other stuff to get to where I was, but I think at that point it just became more important to take care of my soul. And so, yes, you can really stress yourself about this and run yourself into a rabbit hole, especially if you're Googling and reading all night. And it was a 2 year period. I could probably just get a PhD on this stuff, or just like reading on this and research articles and, all of that, because I'm very scientifically based. And I was just in this rabbit hole, and you can make yourself sicker and sicker. And not to mention, I was exposing myself to so much Wi-Fi as well, or EMF or whatever. So I absolutely agree. And I don't know where you are in your healing journey and how far you have come along. But if you're at a point where you feel like, I can let go a little bit, I can live a little bit, I don't have to be so rigid and disciplined. When I had my schedule of my breakfast and what I would eat, and I'm barely tolerating stuff. And then at 10 a.m. was my veggie broth and all of this stuff. And then a little bit of lunch. And then at 3 o'clock. And that's in addition to like 3,000 gazillion supplements that we're on. And so it's a full-time job. So I agree 100%. If you can really tamper down and relax your, sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system, and, have that triggered more, and really relaxing in a day-to-day basis, and cutting down, your rigid scheduling and rigid diet and things like that. I don't say go out and eat something that you couldn't tolerate, but definitely just cutting yourself some slack. And the more you relax too, you're in rest and digest mode. And so then you're letting your body do more digestion versus being very uptight about it. And then you're not digesting, then you're not absorbing the nutrients and things like that. So 100% agree with that. And that's a great question for everybody else. If you guys recall, very early on too, when we had first started this group, I had put a whole a thing on vacation, supplement vacation. And that's something I practice very, very frequently. If I am traveling, I know with COVID we didn't travel much, but if I am traveling, I really do not take my supplements with me unless it's anything prescription or my hormones or things like that that I absolutely must take. I leave everything behind. I call it a supplement vacation. I don't take anything with me. Not only does it help me to live life wherever I'm at, whether it's vacation or if I'm traveling for something or the other, it gives me a life to have outside of this, what I have to do 24/7 to take care of my health and try to heal. But it also just gives my body a break. Sometimes your body just gets so used to all of this stuff that you don't really have a choice, and then you just keep taking it and keep taking it, and then your body builds immunity to it or resistance to it, and things like that. So that's another really good place to just say, if I'm traveling for the weekend or if I'm traveling for 5 days and I'm not going to take my supplements with me, that's perfectly fine. Of course, prescription meds and whatever your doctor's ordered for you, you have to take. But other than that, give yourself some, grace, and give yourself a break from all of this stuff that we have to do on a day-to-day basis to feel better. And so, yes, 100% agree. Mary says, I've been diagnosed with stage 3 adrenal fatigue years ago and was okay for a little while. I now am feeling very sick. I've had so much stress and cannot drop the anxiety. I feel constantly, even if nothing is going on. I'm also suffering from vertigo. I feel like I've gotten a lot worse since COVID. Supposedly, I've not had it, and a level 3 cervical fusion I had in 2020. I don't even know where to start. I will be taking saliva tests as soon as the kit is sent to me by my naturopathic doctor. That's exactly what I was going to tell you, Mary. If you had adrenal fatigue, stage 3 adrenal fatigue years ago, you probably had quite a bit of imbalance in your hormones, in your thyroid. I don't know if all of that was checked and treated. Some practitioners will only treat the adrenals, which is okay that you're addressing the root cause, but it's called the OAT, ovarian adrenal thyroid. It's basically, like, I call it like a bar stool, and nothing will balance if one of those are off. So I don't know if back then a lot of that stuff was taken care of, but it sounds like now, with your high levels of stress and constant anxiety, it sounds like your adrenals are constantly revved up again. And the only way to figure that out is with a cortisol test. It's a 4-point cortisol test. I had a week last week or the week before. I just had a lot of stress going on with stuff and some personal stuff and the kids stuff and just a bunch of things going on. And that whole week I was revved up. My adrenals were really revved up. I had to really make a conscious effort to relax at the end of the night, switch off, turn phones off. I mean, just really focus on intentional, relaxation and healing and all of that. And it's just really, really important, especially when you are feeling this way. A lot of tapping things, you can look up on YouTube, EFT tapping. Anytime that you're in that situation of stress, whether it's your job or your boss or your child or whatever, to really learn the steps of tapping. And I do some breathing, I do some box breathing, things like that, to really bring myself down from that. But then once they've tested your 4-point cortisol and seen where your adrenals are, then they can really prescribe you the right supplements, because you can really make yourself sick if you're already, it sounds like, revved up and your adrenals are in overdrive, and then they give you more stuff to really rev you up, like adrenal supplements and rhodiola and ginseng and like just a bunch of stuff that can rev you up. It can make you a lot sicker. And the opposite can happen too. If you're really like flatlined and then you overstimulate, that could be a problem too. So you really need the saliva test as soon as you can get it done, and then get the results and see where you are, and then based on that get proper supplements. The one thing that worked for me, and I've mentioned this previously in the lives, is Phosphodil Serene. It's PHOS, phospho, PHO, and then I think it's TIDYL, and then SERINE. Phosphodil Serene is really a supplement that is used a lot in the functional medicine world to really bring you down from that constant revving anxiety feeling. I know a few people have had a lot of success. I've had a lot of success with it, especially I just take one before bedtime. And I know a lot of people have had a lot of success with that as well, to really just kind of stop that crazy anxiety revving kind of feeling. And so, yeah, you really have to work with a practitioner to figure out, are you hyper, are you hypo, and then what are the correct supplements that you can go from there. Okay, Melinda says, how can I stabilize a flare-up with I accidentally eat a bad food like almonds, milk, additives that weren't caught, etc.? That happens to me a lot, or I just choose to live life. And so, like, on the weekends, my kids want to go out to eat once in a while or whatever. So then I take SC60. I've put the links before of this company that I use everything, all their supplements, everything, Global Healing, and I use their SC60, and I just really, really like that. And it's basically like a binder, and it helps. I eat it before I go out to eat, and so that any of the hydrogenated fats or the trans fats or the really bad oils that they're using to cook in the restaurant, or sometimes even just hidden gluten, I take this before I go out to eat, and it really helps. They have a really awesome vegan enzyme. It's a digestive enzyme that I use, and I eat that too before I go out. That really helps. So all of those things, again, I have to be very careful. And if you scroll down in the page, there is a weekend that we were out of town. If you scroll down in the group, we were out of town, I want to say in Tennessee. And the next morning, after we came back, I put a post about what I do once I've had a weekend like that. Like, we were gone for 4 days. I had no choice. I had to eat out pretty much every meal. And so I put kind of my whole protocol. I put a mycobind in there, which is an okra-based and beetroot-based powder that I use to kind of like, soak up and take all the bad stuff out. I think there was glutathione in there. And then I can't remember all the things that I had done, but I had, a specific set of things that I had to do for that week. I know chlorella is actually really, really good. Spirulina, moringa, all of those powders. I actually had some, I just added, just for no reason today, just added a scoop of chlorella to my smoothie because it helps with detoxing and getting stuff out of my body. And so those are really good things that I think have really helped. If people are going to go out to have a drink, and again, with people like us, if you're very, very sick, I mean, that's just not something you can do. But proteolytic enzymes are really good. I've done that before, where I'm not a big drinker, and I probably drink maybe 2 glasses, a year, or 3 glasses a year, like very little, if that. I'm really, for a few years, I completely stopped, 0. But very rarely, if I did, I'd take a proteolytic enzyme beforehand with my SC60 and things like that. So those are things that I do, and I think you should definitely, especially try with bad foods. If you end up like do a binder, coffee enemas are really good for that and getting that junk out of you. But really, coffee enemas boost up your glutathione production by over 300%, and so then that glutathione will help take stuff out. So I don't know if you're doing coffee enemas. Doing a sauna after a night, if you ate out and something bad was in your food, do a sauna, detox that stuff out, sweat it all out. All of those things are things that have just really, really helped me. Tammy says, if you have time, I have another question. If not, I'll put it up for next week. Nausea is so bad. I take ginger. Just wondering if it's from my vagus nerve, because comes and goes with my other symptoms. So I will say that I can't give medical advice, because I always make that disclaimer, and this is not a forum for medical advice. It's just a live Q&A for all the things that I did. So I can't particularly tell you because I don't know your history as far as the nausea, what's the cause, where it's coming from. It's great to take ginger. That's very helpful, but it's just ginger is unfortunately trying to help with the symptoms versus taking care of the problem. I love ginger. I eat a lot of ginger. Absolutely love ginger. Um, so it's really good to take, but you've got to find the root cause. You have to find out if it's a supplement that you're taking. Sometimes for me, it's just that it's a supplement that is not sitting well with me. My multivitamin is just getting a little too strong for me, and so instead of two, I've cut down to one because it was making me a little nauseous and things like that. Your body's pretty amazing in telling you. And funny enough, when some of my blood work came back, my B vitamins were a little high, so I do have to go down in my multivitamins. Your body will tell you, and so you really need to figure out what you're taking and when it starts. And sometimes, I mean, I've done this where I just completely stop all the supplements completely, and then I start off one at a time. I take one for 3 days. If I do okay, then I start the next one, and that should really help you, figure it out. Of course, vagus nerve, vertigo, all of those things can cause nausea, diarrhea, those kind of symptoms as well. You have to just see when you're getting it, keep a diary. Are you very stressed? Are you very, did you do something physical and go to work out? Were you in a certain area? Were you having certain supplements that day? Did you eat something similar the night before that every time you eat? So there's a lot of factors that go into that you'd have to really take into consideration. But I really, the first place to start is probably just some supplements. I've done that and it's been very helpful for me, to figure out if I can tolerate things or not. So that's, a first start. And then, I had a EV, I had an electric vehicle, and it was just making me very nauseous. And so I ended up trading it in. This is when I was very sick, and obviously, so I had a lot of sensitivities, but that was another big portion of that. And till this day, if I sit in the back of that particular car, like it just makes me very nauseous. So there's so many factors. Like if I'm on my phone a lot, especially last week and the week before, like I was saying, I was having a very stressful week, and I was on my phone a lot, and I was on my computer a lot, and I was teaching some classes, and it made me very sick. And so this week I have actively get up in the morning, keep my phone away, been actively just trying to stay away from the EMF and the radiations and things like that. So try to see, multitude of factors. Nausea is just such a broad term. I don't know when the last time you had your blood work done, but sometimes, if you're over supplementing with B12, I think B6. I mean, there's just a bunch of supplements that will give you a lot of nausea. I don't know, birth control pills will do that sometimes, things like that. So if you've started hormones recently, maybe just, start like talking to your practitioner about your hormone levels and things like that. So it's really just dependent, and this could be so many factors, but I wanted to just kind of at least give you a lot of suggestions as to what you can start looking into, and your body will tell you. Listen to your intuition. It will tell you why you are so nauseous. Like I said, I just out of the blue, I've been on this multivitamin for years, and out of the blue, the last like 3 weeks, I can only take one. I stopped it for a few days, and then I'm only taking one. So your body will tell you. You just have to listen to your body and be intuitive and listen to it. So hope that helps, Tammy. And then Deb just put a question today. Usually I can't get to the questions if they're put on the day of, but as I was cutting and pasting the questions from the where I put the live Q&A image, I was cutting and pasting all the questions, and I saw this one for today's live event. So I'm just going to quickly answer it. And Deb asks, question for tonight. I've been detoxing from mold for the last 6 months. Can't seem to get an answer as how we will know when it's all good, as I want to start treatment for Lyme. The Lyme symptoms are getting progressively worse, i.e. pain, immune issues, etc. Deb, if you heard, my earlier answer to Claudia asked about the average time. There's no average time. It really is dependent from person to person. Are you a 6-week kind of person? Are you a 6-month kind of person? Are you a 6-year kind of person? So it really depends. But one thing I have noticed is, it was never accurate for me, but I know my Shoemaker trained doctor, a mole doctor, had me do a lot of the VCS, and he really swore by it. And then ultimately he realized, he was like, no, the VCS is very inaccurate for you. But I think a lot of practitioners swear by the VCS, visual contrast screening. It's a tool, it's a test they do online, to see if you've been detoxing well. But I think just symptomatically, you should start feeling better. You should have a little bit more energy. At least that's what I started feeling. Um, I started having better mood, better hormonal numbers coming back. I mean, I'm sure you're getting blood work done. Your blood numbers should start looking normal and better. VEGF, MMP 9, VEGF, MMP 9, C4A, TGF beta. I mean, all of those numbers should really start coming down and looking better. So really, a lot of it is blood based, but then a lot of it is just symptomatically how you're feeling. And if you feel like you're starting to get a little better, don't push yourself, but at least know that you're in the right direction. But it's very dependent from person to person. Um, and, everything that everyone does and feels is so different. And then, of course, when you're detoxing from mold too, it's very, very critical to have all your detox channels open. Make sure you're detoxing, make sure that stuff is coming out, and binders, and really clearing out your gut, and sweating, and all of those things. So very, very important to really have detox channels open, because if you're actively detoxing, like I said, for me, the 7 liver cleanses were a game changer, and all that kind of stuff. So it's multifaceted, prong, approach, where you're really working on so many different things. But you should just start feeling better. Sometimes you feel better and then feel horrible the next day, and you're like, I was wrong. No, it's just that you feel worse for less amount of time, or the time between you felt horrible and then felt horrible again, the time is getting longer and longer. So I wouldn't get just so upset if you crash the next day, or if you feel horrible one day. That doesn't mean you backtracked. You have to really monitor your symptoms and say, okay, am I going longer without feeling ill? Am I ill, but I'm ill for a shorter period of time? Are my symptoms for a less period of time? Am I happier just for 6 hours today evening versus, being just, melancholy all day, or things like that. So watch out for these little signs. And, is your energy, like I remember, like I said, I've told you guys this, I walked, to my driveway, and I could barely walk. Then I started walking out the driveway. Then I started walking down the road. And those are all indicators for me. And then I remember one day just crying and calling my husband, because I'd walked the whole circle, and it took me so long to have done that. So little signs, keep looking out for them, and, keep your eyes peeled out for all of these things. And, then you'll kind of know that it's getting better. So anyways, uh, we are getting to the end of time here. I want to take a little time in the end, just where I really comment. And if anyone has questions about supplements that I listed, or brands, or anything like that. So I want to take some time in the end to really just go through all the comments. And if you have supplements you ask about, or that I mentioned, I know I talked really fast today just because I wanted to get through all the questions. We had so many questions, the 2 from last time, and then the ones from this week. So glad we were able to get through all of them. And I will comment if you guys have any questions about the supplements or anything I talked about. And then we will plan on meeting next week again. I hope you guys have a great week, and happy healing. It's good to see all you guys out here, and hope you guys have a great week. Take care. Bye-bye.